Does that work?
I mean, I can still hear you.
I'm like 50-50 sure John Roderick holds the mic when he podcasts.
Well, he probably does. I think actually what he does is he's like in a deeply lounged position on his couch, and he just rests the mic on his chest.
There's not a couch in here.
There's not a couch in here. I'm glad you looked around to make sure that there had not been one added since last time.
I just think that you could do more to improve the.
You think so?
I want to say the quality of our podcast setup, because in my opinion, very high quality. Look at these sound panels.
Yeah.
Just look at them. There's 4 of them. There's a fern next to you. It's not real, but it's there. I'm just saying I'm not really lounging right now.
It's true. It's true.
I'm very much in more of like an active position for peak podcasting performance.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we want. We want your peak podcasting performance.
Yeah. I mean, just listen to those plosives. You can't even hear them.
Yeah, there aren't any.
Peak. Anyways. Okay.
I miss the days when we had the mic stands. That was really fun.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, it didn't.
It would just like slowly sink down.
Yeah, and just had to set them up every time. That was, boy, the dark ages of this show. I created this whole new template for our show so that it's like the episode's a certain color, and then like it's got the bold all set up so I don't have to type it every time, and then I keep accidentally filling in over the template the show information, and I have to recreate it every time. It's terrible.
My favorite thing is when we end up with multiple shows with the same number. That's always really helpful.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, so I'm creating the one for 141. That's right. We're playing that far ahead. Just for everyone who wants to know.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about the XE5 on July 7th. Get
Assuming
ready.
it exists. Hey, probably will.
June 12th, X Summit Shanghai. It's happening.
Yep.
It's happening. I mean, who knows? What show are we even on? It's already happened, Daniel.
Yeah,
it's already happened.
Yeah, they're wondering why you're not talking about it right now.
Why haven't Lucas and Daniel talked about the XE5? Lucas is such a Fuji stan. You think they would have done an emergency episode? We're just doing this at our own pace.
Yep.
Nice and easy.
We're just waiting for the cameras to come to us.
That's what I'm saying. Just waiting for them to come to us.
If only the cameras did actually come to us.
Man, that'd be the dream, right?
It really would.
I think that you have to have more initiative than you or I in order for the cameers to come to you.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We just got to wait. It's all just a waiting game.
Just got to wait it out.
Just got to be patient.
If we keep telling ourselves that.
Good things come to those who wait.
Maybe so.
Okay, so that's all pre-show. Or none of it is. I don't know. Maybe you start here.
Anything could happen.
Who knows? Yep. Who knows? I'm not in control of the edit. I don't do anything around here. I was going to give an update on my triathlon. I know that we've been talking about that a lot. It's just a big part of my life now, apparently.
Yeah, it's almost a segment of the show, really. Lucas's fitness journey.
Be unsanctioned.
Yeah, it's a segment of the pre-show.
We're only allowed to have 3 segments. Can the pre-show have segments?
If it does, maybe we've gone too far.
This is a concept we haven't explored, Daniel. The pre-show has bits. That's for sure.
Okay.
Does it have segments? We'll save that for a later day. I'll put that as the pre-show as episode 141 that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
That's
when we will discuss whether the pre-show has segments.
Has segments, yeah. And then it'll just be very navel-gazy. So, anyways, I ran that triathlon on Memorial Day, which was a long time ago at this point. And I'm sure everyone has been clamoring to know. I mean, I haven't been reading the emails, but I'm sure that you received hundreds at this point.
Hundreds of emails asking how bad did Lucas do in that triathlon?
That's not what they said, I bet. I don't know. I didn't read any of the emails. I'm sure that everyone wants to know. And I beat my time from last year by 15 minutes.
It seems pretty good. What was the total time? Like, what is 15 minutes percentage-wise?
If I said the total time, it would be very embarrassing for me because of how slow I am.
I see.
But I finished in like an hour and 44 minutes.
So, I mean, 15 minutes is a substantial portion of time.
Yep. And I think
that's a notable improvement.
I mean, it was a minute 1 40, and then last year I did like an hour 56. So it's kind of like in that range. Yeah.
Cool. That's a good improvement.
Yeah, pretty big deal.
And what's the next thing you're preparing for is in like October or something?
Yeah, October. Yep. Nice. We've already talked about that one.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I loop back and let everyone know that I didn't die.
Yep.
Obviously. But also did better.
Now that you have those pedals, the clipless pedals, I guess they're called, are you going to use those, you think, in the next triathlon?
Yes, absolutely. It'd be ridiculous to not to.
So
they're going to make me way faster.
You're not going to use the Vibe bike and you're going to use the clipless pedals.
Honestly, I haven't rolled out the idea of using the Vibe bike. We'll just see where it goes.
Yeah.
Have I done an update on that? I did an update on that last time. No, the next episode is the Vibe bike update. We can talk about it now, though, if you want. I took the whole thing apart.
The whole thing?
Yeah, I did. Did I send you pictures?
No.
Oh my gosh, Dan, I'll have to send you pictures. I know it looked like I was reaching for pictures. I was just setting down my water.
Yeah,
Don't get excited.
I was like, I don't think you need to send pictures right now.
Lucas, calm down. My phone's over here, not over there. Anyways, I still can't figure out what kind of bike it is, but I did find out that the serial number starts with a W, not a G.
Big difference.
So the 4 kind of looked like a G, I guess. Anyways, I disassembled the entire frame except the stem, because the stem has like loose ball bearings in it, and then I want to be able to take them apart, clean it, and then re-grease it and put it back together immediately, rather than like losing all the balls.
Yeah. That would be undesirable.
100% would have happened. But
yep.
I got the bottom bracket disassembled. I took the pedals off. I broke the chain so I could put a new chain on and measure it. And I took all the brakes off and like everything. And so it's just the frame itself with the main stem and or the main, not the stem, but like the fork and the piece that runs through the center column.
This is basically like how people have a project car. You have a project bike now.
Yeah. And so I have everything in a box. And I've ordered all the parts. And the next time I have like 4 hours available, I'm going to de-rust and degrease all of the components and then reassemble.
Nice.
And I think everything should probably work. I'm probably going to run into a lot of options trying to re-index all those gears and levers and what have you. But I have to take all the tape off the bar. I still can't figure out what kind of bike this is.
Maybe it's underneath the tape. Unlikely.
I don't know. There's like some components are Japanese. Most of the components are French. It's a 1970s something bike. It has what I've learned is a death stem and suicide brakes.
Neither of those sound like good things.
So
I don't know if you should use that in a triathlon.
I'm wondering if I should even bike with it. I'm like,
Should I use this bike that has a death stem? No,
apparently
probably not.
Some iterations of the quill type stem that this bike have are known to snap off.
Oh, yeah, that's not desirable.
No handlebars.
What about the brakes? Why are they called suicide brakes?
So they has like you normally if like you're on a drop bar bike, your brakes are kind of are up in front of you. For this one, they have an extra metal bar that kind of wraps around so that if you're in the flat bar position on a drop bar, because you can have your hands in the drops, you can have them kind of like in front of you for doing hill climbs. You can reach your hands over and grab the brake bar, like right where your hands are.
Sure.
But that design didn't allow for like full actuation of the brakes.
Oh.
And so you would find yourself in a position where you pull those and you're not actually braking as hard as the brakes would allow because you couldn't get enough leverage.
Yeah, that's a weird shortcoming.
Whenever you crashed, you were in you were not in a good bracing position, and so you would just go over the bars.
It feels like it wasn't thought through very well.
They don't do those anymore.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
So is that what happens when you let the French design a bike? I mean, come on.
Wow. Maybe. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm 50% chance this is a French bike. Yeah. Anyways, I'm still trying to figure out what it is. It has a stamped, like where the gear set, like the gear changey thing, group set, that's what it's called, where the group set is and where like the bike sits, the rear wheel, that's stamped, not forged. I forget what it's called, but it's stamped, which means that it's more of a mass produced bike, not like a racing bike.
Sure.
And then the where the seat post meets the triangle piece, I forget what that's called too. I'm not a bike expert, Daniel. I'm a camera expert. But it's not butted. It has this like a race back style where the fork like goes past and then is welded to or like soldered to rather than like button welded. And so like that I've never seen before, and I can't find any pictures online of that exact configuration. And so it feels unique, and I don't know. It's just a weird bike.
It sounds like it. Very weird bike.
So we're in progress. Give me another like 2 months. I think it's gonna be up and running.
We'll have to check in on that and see how the Vibe bike is coming along.
I'm gonna put a bell on it.
Yeah.
Ding ding.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
We had listener mail.
We did.
Somebody who shoots with a Z8 and a Z6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like he does sports photography.
And I think wasn't really like feedback. Was it feedback? Would you consider that feedback?
It wasn't a correction, but he was just kind of like adding on to things we said.
Yeah, it was kind of, we were talking a lot about the S1 II and the stack sensor, and he kind of wanted to underline some of the, some of the benefits of faster shooting and how that impacts, the photo. And so he's talking about his sports work and that sort of thing, and how, with faster shutter speed, you can do more with electronic shutter and kind of save the life of your mechanical shutter and unlock those burst rates that are, not restricted by the mechanical shutter speed.
Yeah, so, the burst rate thing definitely had made sense. I thought the mechanical shutter lifespan was kind of an interesting point that I guess I hadn't considered. I mean, I know mechanical shutters have a limited life, but when I see the numbers, I think like, that's so big. I'm never like, when would I ever hit that number? But I can see how if you're doing lots of bursts,
yeah,
really
you could
hit
easily
that pretty
shoot,
easily.
5,000 photos in a night or something if you're just always shooting bursts.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so that's definitely it seems like a good reason. I think he also might have mentioned. Did he mention like LED lights too?
Yeah, that like you get banding with an electronic shutter, but if it's fast enough, the banding is less noticeable.
Yeah.
Which can be pretty helpful, especially if you have something like a Z9 that doesn't even have a shutter. The Z8 doesn't have a shutter either, right?
I
think it's electronic only.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those two cameras are so similar.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
The Z6 doesn't have a mechanical shutter?
So this is the Z6 Mark III, which is partially stacked.
I don't think it does. I think it's only the Z5 II that has the actual mechanical shutter.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anywho, I did double check the pricing, and you get a Z6 Mark III with a 24 to 120 f4 for $2,900, which is still like $200 less, $300 less than an S1 Mark II.
Yeah. The Z6 Mark III is priced aggressively, I would say.
Yep. So if you need the speed and you just need the photos, I still think it's pretty good.
And the Z8 is really not that expensive ananymore. It's like considering it's basically the same, basically the same camera as the Z9. It's pretty cheap.
It's been sitting at $3,500 for months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're doing photo, it's kind of hard to pick the S1 II over the Z6 III or the Z8.
Yeah. I mean, of course, ignoring ecosystem and all that. Like if you're picking new. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who cares about all that stuff?
Yeah. Who cares indeed?
Not me. Daniel, this next topic is all you.
Yep.
But I want to know at the end of it if you're going to buy a speed editor for DaVinci Resolve because of this experience.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this topic was, Blackmagic makes all those various editing tools. The speed editors, I think the most affordable one has like, some buttons and a knob and stuff. But they also sell like a full size keyboard. They have color grading things and stuff. And I mean, these things aren't cheap. Like the speed editor is like $395 or something. Pretty expensive. They go up from there. And, I've always kind of seen that and wondered, is it really faster to edit stuff that way versus just using your mouse and keyboard and like learning the keyboard commands and so on. And just kind of always wondered about it. I'm always looking for ways to optimize and go faster. And so I kind of started there. And I think a while back I was talking to you. I don't remember if it was on the show or not, but you mentioned the Logitech MX Creative Console.
Yep. And then you like Instabought it, right?
Yeah, I bought it pretty soon after that. So basically that was Logitech acquired another company that used to make similar things. That was Loopdeck that Logitech acquired, and this kind of came out of that. So they sell this MX Creative Console thing, and it's basically two parts. So one is a Bluetooth thing that has a knob and I think 4 buttons on it. And then they have a totally separate deal that plugs into the computer, and it has, I think, 9 buttons on it that are like little tiny screens, and you can set those to different functions and press the button, and it does whatever, like macro operation. That part is pretty similar to like a Stream Deck, if you've ever seen one of those. So they sell like this kit of these two things. And then there's all these plugins where you can use it with various apps, and you can customize what it does and so on. So I got that, and I started trying to use that with Lightroom. And I've only used the knob controller things, like the knob and the 4 buttons. And I think I set it up in Lightroom to basically to go through photos and flag or unflag them, kind of some basic operations like that. And it definitely seemed like it made things a little bit faster, like just, not having to move the mouse around as much. Like, I think that's the main thing, is not needing to move the mouse and kind of being able to like roll through pictures. And it was definitely pretty good for like, culling photos when you go through a large.
For culling
large
photos,
photo
do you
set.
feel like you had a pretty good workflow of just using the keyboard to like, arrow through things and flag picks and rejections and all that sort of stuff? Like you could basically cull photos, not like crop or those kind of things, with only the keyboard?
Yeah, I think so. And that's basically what I was doing before.
But this seems like it's even faster than those habits.
I think so. And one thing I particularly like is you can do all of it with one hand.
Nice.
I feel like that's unless you do something weird with your keyboard shortcuts, that's not normally how it is on the keyboard, because you normally would have like one hand on the arrow keys, the other hand on the like whatever buttons you're using for a pick and stuff.
Right.
I like that this is one hand, and I think what I also enjoyed about it was that I could be using the mouse to edit a photo, and then I could immediately go over that knob and like go back into like culling mode. And
Nice.
I don't know, it felt faster.
Yeah, anything that can kind of get you to where you need to go with less hand movement and less precise, like having to precisely move a mouse, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you just need one hand free to be sipping on coffee while you're killing those photos.
Absolutely. A lot of photos to go through. You may need some of that stuff.
Maybe.
So we're in a position right now where we do quite a lot of photo editing. We have a monthly like retainer contract with a client where we edit. We go
It's
through
like 4,000 photos a month.
It really is. It's like at least 4,000 photos a month.
And you're doing like all of it. I don't do anything.
And they give us the raw files, and we have to go through and pick out the good ones and do some basic edits to them. And so it's a lot of stuff. And things like this feel like they kind of optimize it. But I started using that controller, and I was really enjoying it. And I felt like I just wish this had a little bit more. Like I wish
You're talking about you were using the Logitech MX Creative Console.
Yeah, and I just felt like I wished I could get a little bit more done, with just that thing. And so I started looking at alternatives, and I found this thing called the Tourbox.
Did you return the Logitech MX Creative Console, or are you still a proud owner?
Still have it.
Are you dual wielding this
I am
Tourbox Elite and that? And have you considered doing that?
I have considered it, and I have not done it. So this Tourbox thing, when I saw it, I've gotten ads for this thing so many times on social media, and kind of always thought it looked weird. Never really like looked into it, but with my experience from having to use the Logitech thing, like suddenly I'm way more interested.
Mm-hmm.
And, long story short, I ended up buying one of these things on Amazon. I've been using it for about a week and a half now. And I'll say that thing blows the MX Creative Console like out of the water in terms of usability. So it was a little more expensive.
Just like $50 more or something, right?
Yeah, 50 or 100. The one I got is the Tourbox Elite, and it's Bluetooth. It was around I guess that was about 50 more. So
Looking at this, $239 USD.
Yep. So what makes this thing cool?
You got the ivory white, but you could have got modern smoke black translucent.
I got the black one. I did not get the translucent one.
Did you not show this to me and it was white?
No, I showed it to you and it was black.
What is wrong with me?
I don't know.
Let's add that as a topic for next week.
Yes, let's spend an entire episode on what is wrong with Lucas. So why this thing is great. So for one thing, it has a lot more buttons on it. You've got 3 different knobs, and then I don't know. Let's see. Probably it has a D-pad, so that's 4 buttons, and then there's probably 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8. Yeah, more buttons past that. The knobs all support haptic feedback. So as you turn the knob,
7
more. Yeah. So as you turn the knobs, like you can actually feel kind of like fake clicks, which is really helpful actually for knowing like how far you've gone on something.
Are there 2 different knobs on this?
There's 3.
There's a third knob?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's a wheel.
Yeah. But I mean, there's 3,
it's like a thumb dial, a knob, and a wheel.
Yep.
What's with this button on the left side? They're like, it's like a rectangular-ish device, and in the top left is the jog wheel, and then directly below it is kind of like you would imagine a Canon thumb wheel, with it just kind of like turns, and then there's a standard knob, just like looks like a volume knob smack in the middle. But on the left edge there is a button. That seems like if you pushed it, you would just shove the whole controller over. So how do you get enough leverage to even actuate that thing?
The controller weighs about a pound.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. I mean, I think intentionally so, so that it doesn't slide around on the table. It makes it feel premium.
Interesting.
And it also has batteries in it, so that adds to it.
What kind of batteries does it take?
AA.
Blech.
Yeah.
It's not rechargeable?
No. I mean, you can use rechargeable batteries, but it is not.
Okay.
So they all the buttons. It's a weird looking device. It's made to use with your left hand. All the buttons are different sizes and shapes and stuff.
Good.
And the reason it's made that way is that you can feel where everything is, and you don't have all these buttons that feel exactly the same, like your keyboard.
Yeah, they did a good job putting two buttons next to each other and not doing a third or a fourth where feeling it out would be weird.
Yeah.
You can absolutely tactilely find all of these buttons, it would seem, and the shapes and the D-pad and all that jazz. So
Yep. So before I talk about how you use it, I have to say the pitfall of something like this is that it depends on software support, because you need to be able to do some sort of operation with you press some button and it does something in the software. And that kind of requires the software to expose that capability. And so, I mean, on a simple level, anything you can do with a keyboard, you can do. But if you think about in the software, I'd really like to be able to just adjust exposure. That requires that the software lets you assign a key command to exposure, or gives you some way to set exposure. And that's not necessarily a given. So if you're using Lightroom Cloud, the newer version of Lightroom.
Yeah, not classic.
It doesn't support a lot of that stuff out of the box. And the way the Logitech MX Creative Console gets around that is Logitech has a plugin that kind of installs into Lightroom, and it enables it to access some of those things. But even still, even with something like a plugin, it just seems like Lightroom Cloud doesn't have the same level of support as Lightroom Classic. So if you use Lightroom Classic, that is still a more powerful application than the cloud version, and it has support for all these things. So using Lightroom Classic, you can set everything on this controller to control specific settings in Lightroom. And even further than that, you can set key combinations to different things. So I can set a knob to say, when I turn this knob, this affects the exposure. But then I can also set it to where if I press a certain button first and then turn the knob, that does something different. I can make it where if I'm holding a button and turn the knob, that does something different. So it gives you a ridiculous amount of flexibility in terms of how you use those buttons and knobs to do things. But then with Lightroom Classic, you can just directly access all of the settings for editing a photo. So
nice.
I have it set up where I can hold down a button and turn that Canon style dial, and it just it just goes right into the mode where it starts rotating a picture in the crop mode. And so instead of me having to go click on crop, pull up the thing, use my mouse to try and get the rotation right, and then close it. Instead of all that, I'm just, with my left hand only, holding a button, turning a dial until it looks good, and then releasing that. And the operation's complete. And I can go and edit exposure or color temperature or whatever else I need to do on that picture. And it is just incredible how much faster that makes photo editing.
It sounds awesome. I'm really upset that something like this doesn't necessarily work with an iPad.
Yeah, they do have a model. It's the Toolbox Elite Plus that supports iPad, but it has that same problem I talked about, the software support. So on the iPad, it can basically do whatever you can do with key commands.
Okay.
But if you can't do it with a keyboard command or assign a keyboard shortcut to it, you can't do it with the controller, which is really limiting.
That does. And it's more expensive than the one that you bought.
Yep.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. So,
because
I am really curious what you think about this, because I feel like this is right up my alley. I'm really into weird controllers and things like that. I feel like you're generally like more careful with your money, like less willing to, do things like that. Like maybe you're like less concerned about optimizing stuff like that. But for me, like I have a separate preset on this thing for culling photos. So I have one where I can just roll through really quickly and flag things. And then I switch to a different preset to do the editing. I mean, the other night I edited like 150 photos in one evening session. And to me, it feels like it's faster. Like I can edit basically as fast as I can think of things rather than having to go through the app.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also honestly just more relaxing because I can do almost all of it with one hand. So
Yep.
like you made the joke about drinking a coffee, but I mean, seriously, yeah, like it's nice being at a coffee shop and I can be, drinking coffee or whatever. And I'm doing all the stuff in my left hand. Like it feels maybe a little less, like it's a little bit less of like a physical strain doing stuff. And I think I really enjoy all of that with something that I do as often as photo editing. And I'm curious, like based on my experience, would you ever consider something like that?
Yeah, so I guess maybe three things here, maybe only two. We'll see. The first is I looked up the DaVinci Resolve micro color panel to remind myself that it's $360, but you can dock an iPad in it.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
great.
I mean, and that one is kind of made for color grading in Resolve.
It's only it just works with Resolve. Like it's made for Resolve. You can probably also connect it to a computer. And it reminds me that if we switch to like using proxies in the cloud, then I could introduce my iPad into Emulate, and I could just like use my little little color station. My problem with all of this though is it's a lot of money for a single purpose device. And I know that something like one of these Tourbox Elites or whatever you can use on multiple things. I have just had little to no success in my actual life deploying auxiliary accessories because they always seem to break, or the things that I set up eventually stop working and then I have to like reset them up, or I'm not using them quite like I thought I would, or it's just like an extra step or as an extra thing on my desk.
Yep.
I've tried using like Wacom tablets, and I have that Duck Macro keyboard thing that you gave me, and I previously had like a macro gaming keyboard thing that was used to like just to run macros, and little by little they all kind of fall to the wayside, and I always just go back to mouse and keyboard and memorize key commands and that sort of stuff. And I do think like there's a lot of stuff that it's like, boy, I'm repeating the same key combo, and it would be way freaking easier if I could just customize that to one thing or like set it to a macro.
Yep.
And I do see like room for that sort of thing. I just haven't ever been like spending enough time in a single application to feel like it justified min-maxing on input in that particular way.
Yeah.
And for like the photo editing, it's getting to be where like maybe something like that kind of really makes sense. But thus far, I've done a few on my computer, a few of those sets on my computer, or maybe it's like one of the number that I did on the computer. And I was like, holy cow, I'm way faster with Lightroom on the computer. And Lightroom on Mac Windows just reminds me of how much better Lightroom Classic is than Lightroom Normal. I haven't used Lightroom Classic in a while, but Lightroom Classic has so much more support, gets new features first, and it's still just way stinking better than not Lightroom Classic unless you need Cloud Sync.
Yeah. Well, for me too, like I actually think I like using Lightroom Classic for the work stuff because it separates that from my personal photo library.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, like I probably should just do that because one of the things you can do with Lightroom Classic is you can take photos and dump them into a synced bin, and then it will sync the smart previews to your Lightroom library, but not count against your storage. And then you can open them up on the iPad, make edits to the smart previews, and then those will sync back to Lightroom Classic, where you can then export the changes to the real RAWs for your final delivery. Though it does get like a little weird with Lightroom Normal and how those things pollute your library. But what I've currently been doing is I've been turning off Lightroom on my auxiliary computer that functions as a backup vector. I just like close that Lightroom, and then I import the photos into normal Lightroom on my computer, and I've been filtering and doing all the editing with my iPad.
Yeah. You really like using the iPad.
I just like the posture that it puts me in. If I'm on my computer, I'm doing real work.
Yep.
But if I'm on my iPad, I'm just having a good time.
I think going back to the other stuff you said, I definitely share the concern about having a controller with a, that's just for a single app. And that's kind of what has steered me away from the Blackmagic stuff so far. I mean, my experience definitely has made me more open to the Blackmagic stuff. But what I like about the Toolbox thing is that you can use it with all these applications. Like you can use it with Resolve.
So you're saying that this has not motivated you to buy a Blackmagic speed editor?
No, not yet. So
it has speed in the name.
I need to look into it more because I don't think Resolve has perfect support for the controllers, like in the same way that Lightroom Cloud doesn't. I don't think you can like directly attach, controls to things in the program. And I don't know if their own controllers have better support in that way. Cause that would be one, that'd be one benefit, right? Like if you could, more directly, like for the color grading, if you could more directly manipulate color stuff with their color grading panel as opposed to the Toolbox, which I bet you can.
My understanding was
motivation.
Yeah, I don't know what third-party support they have. I know you can like write scripts and stuff, so I can imagine that you could make whatever support that you need.
Yeah.
But I know that the Resolve stuff that they sell, like even the buttons are specifically labeled like in and out, and that sort of thing. And I think that they're really meant to, like, you're buying this set of controls, and they've designed it such that it's kind of most of everything that you would probably need.
And I think that brings me to the other thing you said, which is like, you've tried things like this in the past and just none of them have really stuck. I've definitely had that same experience with things where I've tried all sorts of weird control systems and stuff, and they never felt like they were worth it. I think it's really only worth it unless you're doing this stuff a lot. And so I think for video editing and photo editing, especially photo editing, that's where it's really felt worth it to me because I'm doing the same thing over and over, hours per week. And that's when you can really optimize and like get value out of it because you kind of have to learn how to use these things. It's a little bit harder than a keyboard at first. You have to get the muscle memory. And I feel like I'm doing enough photo editing now that I am building that up. And I think that I'd probably be able to get to that point with video editing too, even though I don't do quite as much video editing. So I think like I've kind of had some of those same reservations in the past, but like this recent experience has made me feel like it can be worth it sometimes.
You should try this thing with Resolve to see if you can set up things so that the like maybe zooming the timeline up and down and then left and right, like vertically and horizontally, and then useful. Maybe I don't know, like scrubbing or something, or even just like input output and then like blade would be useful. I think that if you could tie it to a few of those things, you might find that this can be super handy for video editing. Based upon your thoughts on how this works with Lightroom not Classic versus how much more customizable it is with Lightroom Classic, it discourages me from wanting to invest the money to try this because I don't even think I pay for Lightroom Classic right now. I think I'm only paying for Lightroom Normal.
I don't know if you have a choice or not.
I don't know if I do either. Maybe it's Photoshop that I'm not paying for.
Yeah,
and I do get both.
I think if you get Lightroom, you have both.
Who knows? I'm not going to look up what I have. Point is, if it doesn't like super work very well, I would be discouraged to... Because like if this was as customizable and perfect as it is for Classic on the iPad, then I would, like, in a heartbeat. Yeah. Because the iPad has a really good screen, and if it alleviates from me from needing a keyboard, but could improve my ability to like pick and scroll and sort, then I could like have my pen in one hand and then my other thing in the other, and just like boop, boop, boop.
Now, I mean, you might be able to do the culling with something like this on the iPad. I just don't think you'd be able to do the editing the same way. Because I think most of the stuff that you do when you're culling photos, I think you can probably set that up with keyboard commands. So it would probably work with something like the Toolbox Elite Plus or whatever it's called. But the place where I was really getting value with Lightroom Classic was that, like, for example, I can set a knob to color temperature. Yep. And I don't think you can do that with Lightroom Cloud, and you probably can't do that on the iPad.
Well, I'm going to go dig into what the internet thinks about this whole situation and then not report back ever.
Yeah, so just never report back.
Never report back.
By the way, if you ever want to try the Logitech MX Creative Console.
Does that work with the iPad?
I don't think it does, but I haven't looked. So
Logitech Creator. Oh, no. Eator Console. iPad. Compatible with iPad? Question mark? Unlikely. The blurb on Logitech page says it has hooks into blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, my guess is it's not.
Well.
Shame.
Oh, well. Okay. Is that everything on these controllers, Daniel?
I think so.
I think you're going to get a Blackmagic something. I still kind of
probably will.
Kind of want one of those color grading ones. They just seem like so much fun.
Yeah.
They have like all the big the big wheels.
Honestly, I just like some of it is the speed, but I think there are some operations where it's just more intuitive to control that way rather than using a mouse. I don't know.
Got that big old 12.9 inch iPad, man. Yeah, super fun to do some color grading on it. That's all I'm saying.
Sure would.
It's just like so only for one thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not doing this all day, every day. Anyways, Daniel, let's talk about something way more interesting than these stinking Lightroom controllers. We've been on that for like 40 minutes. Ugh. Let's talk about Fujifilm. Not really. I want to talk about flashes more.
Yeah, let's talk about a topic that's even less applicable to most of our audience.
No, Daniel, flashes are really important to everybody right now. Did I loop back on my experience with the EFX? Is that what?
No, I don't think so.
The name of that?
Last we heard, you had remembered that you had one, right?
Right. I have two Fujifilm EF-X8 flashes, which are the flashes that came with some Fujifilm cameras.
And this is branded Fujifilm?
Yeah, it's a Fuji product.
Okay.
It doesn't have batteries. It works by taking power from the hot shoe.
Interesting.
From the camera. And you just slide it onto the hot shoe, and then it sits, down, so it's kind of not taking up too much space, and then you pop it up like you would think of a pop-up flash. And when it's popped up, it's TTL. It just flashes.
You know what camera that would have been really nice if it worked with?
Wait, the X-Half?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Wouldn't that have been good?
Oh well. So I was like, let me see how that works. Pops it on my X-T5, and I'm just like flashing everybody. Just psh, psh, psh,
yep.
psh.
Just walking down the street, flashing everybody.
It's everything that I ever wanted, and it's my new favorite thing. So there's no control. It just goes, and I love it. And if you don't want it to flash, you put it down. If you want it to flash, turn it up. And it is that simple and that stupid.
Nice.
And I'm just direct flash photography is now my life. So
now you own another flash too, right?
Yeah, I own a Godox something. I think it's like the TT350 or something like that. It's a TTL, which is through the lens, Godox Fujifilm flash, like pretty standard. You can put different modifiers on top of it. It turns 90 degrees, and it can rotate and pivot and do all this stuff. And I've used that for like some dance event type stuff. Yeah. And it worked out great. Loved it. It's so good. All right. And so what I want to talk about here today is that Godox released a new flash, which is the IT30 Pro F TTL Mini. And this thing is stinking small, but it's also really, really good. One of the complaints about my flash and the flash that you tried to give me, that the batteries broke in, and then you gave you a whole new one, and then you put batteries in the new one, and then that one had batteries break.
Kind of, yeah. That's sort of what happened.
Yeah. So, anyways, I don't store AA batteries in my flash anymore because of that horrible experience.
Yeah, I think that's a good decision. Good job.
And so, but it takes AA batteries.
This thing is really small.
This new flash that Godox came out with, it's USB-C rechargeable. And you get
so the battery's built in.
Yeah, you get like 560 flashes, and then you can just charge it via USB-C.
Wow.
And so
cool.
It's like a little compact flash.
$75. That's
$75. You can just recharge. You don't have to keep batteries on hand. And the big downside, in my opinion, is that it is not, you can't really rotate it. It is essentially just for like direct flash. Yeah. If you want to be able to do bounce or whatever, you'd have to like take it off, and like I don't know how that would work.
You just tape a little index card on the front of it.
Sure, whatever. But like if you're looking for that direct flash and you want something small to stick on your camera, this thing is as powerful as the TT350 Godox.
Really?
Like it does the same exposure. It says the same like 1/128 power. It has I think it's a little better on, like you can do 30,000 second, whatever flash spec stuff, which is like 10,000 more than the other one. I don't know. I don't know anything about flashes, except this one seems like all the specs are as good or better than the kind of the equivalent like $80 big flash that has the rotating top and all that sort of stuff. So it's like you get everything you would want out of kind of like your standard flash, not like super, super powerful, but this thing is enough to get like some darkening and some flash look in sunlight. So if you're doing like in daylight type flash work where you're trying to make your subject pop, this can do it. Yeah. Versus something like the EF X8 or any of those like really tiny compact flashes that you can get aren't necessarily powerful enough. So like it works in the daylight, charges via USB-C. It's, when I say super small, it's like it's 120 grams. This thing's like 2 inches by 2.5 inches square, and then like 2 inches tall. It's like a little 2 by 2 cube sort of.
I do still feel like it's for a certain look, and it's almost for like a bad like direct flash look, because when I think about comparing it to the bigger one, the two things I think about are like what is the size of the light source and how far off axis from the camera is it? Because I mean, think about like doing lighting for video. You know, you can have two lights that are 100 watts, and if one of them is a like bigger source in the sense that, you know, you're using like a softbox or something to make it bigger, like that's generally more pleasing. And the other thing is, like, typically for video lighting, you want it to be off axis from the camera lens. And a lot of times with flash, you also, you know, use like wireless or something to get it away from the camera. Even if you have something like that 350 on the camera, like it's sticking up pretty far. And so I feel like you get a little bit more separation from the lens, whereas this thing just sits right on top. To me, this feels like it's a good replacement, or, you know, probably a much better version of like the built-in flash on a camera. So if you're looking for that kind of look, I think it'd be great. But despite the specs, I guess like I'm a little skeptical that it's as good as, you know, maybe like a more professional flash.
I mean, if you set it to a lower power, you put the diffusion on, it can give you enough fill to kind of make things work without it looking like wildly overexposed. Like if you're wanting to push exposure and make it that direct flash look, you can. I think that this is less flexible than if you had the ability to bounce it or the ability to do indirect, but there is still cases where you can get a more even exposure look by using direct flash without it looking wrong. And so I think that like there is some value in this. One of those is like you could set up flash sinks, and then you have this thing on the camera, which is way smaller, easier to kind of like carry the camera around on your hip. And then when you shoot this, your other flashes are going to fire too.
I think that's a good use for it, because it has a lot of wireless stuff built in, so you can you know, use it to trigger other flashes, and that would be a good use.
So I think this is pretty cool, and for like $75, I mean, once I decide that the EFX8 just isn't doing it for me, I'm probably gonna buy one of these puppies.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not used my other flash in like a year. And this one would go perfectly with the other one in my drawer.
I definitely think the smaller size is appealing here.
I like it. I think it was.
Does your other one work with the same wireless thing that this one uses?
Yeah, it should.
So you could put this one on your camera, and you could use the other one as a wireless flash. That would be pretty cool.
I could use both flashes.
Yeah.
Genius. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy this just so I can have a reason to use two flashes. This one has a touch screen.
There was this many years ago, like back when we were in college, there was this guy that made and I can't remember his name, but he made a website / blog / whatever called Strobist. And it was about basically like he had these classes, or, you know, kind of like online. It was just like a series of lessons that you could go through online about how to use flash in photography. And so you had like these different like challenges or whatever, where, you know, you start with just like a single flash, and then eventually you move to like an off camera, you know, with a wireless flash, and you have to try and like get different effects with flashes. And I thought it was really cool. You can get some really neat effects with flash, especially if you get creative with it, like with, you know, using multiple flashes or using it off camera. And I think that could be a fun thing to play with at some point.
I think that flash photography is something that's kind of fallen by the wayside. It's a little in vogue right now because of like making it look wrong or whatever, or the direct flash look. But I think that there's a lot more to like when you're good with flash and like knowing how to do flash photography, it kind of unlocks some really interesting stuff that you can do. And so,
yeah,
I like this. I think this is a really fun release, especially in the world of mini flashes, which is kind of exploding right now. So,
yeah, it seems pretty good. I know Godox is one of the companies you constantly see releasing stuff like this, and it's not something I pay much attention to, but this one seems like a good release.
Nice. Oh, you dropped in that link into them.
Yeah.
I kind of want to open this up. Oh, I hit edit. Oh no, Daniel.
No,
Oh no.
no.
Oh no.
Oh,
Oh
no.
jeez. All right. Well, what else are we talking about here? The Strobist. Learn how to light. Oh, this is.
I think we're going to take a
good.
break while you process this.
All right. Cool.
this
Let me look
website.
at this for a little bit.
We'll be back in just a moment, but we wanted to let you know that if you'd like to support the show, you can now subscribe to us on Patreon. It helps cover our hosting costs so we can keep the show running, and you might find an occasional behind-the-scenes post on there, like some photos we've taken recently or a mini review of some new gear. If you're interested, you can find us at patreon.com/cameragearpodcast.
Okay, Daniel. Let's talk about some Sigma rumors.
There are quite a few Sigma rumors.
I actually just pasted something 4 times, and I'm going to leave it because
Thank
it
you for that.
reminds me of like a cool T-shirt or something. Pasta. Okay. Anyways, so you sent this to me. There was a rumor. This is in the wrong spot. We don't need to talk about that. There was a rumor that Sigma is working on APS-C zoom.
Yep. Yeah, 17 to 40 f1.8.
There it is. I'm like, where is this in the stinking notes? There it is. They're working on an APS-C, as you said, 17 to 40 f1.8.
Yep. Which may sound suspiciously similar to one
20.
Sigma APS-C 18 to 35 f1.8.
I mean, everyone was like, when are they going to do it? When are they going to make a mirrorless version of this lens? When are they going to do it? And then they released the 28 to 45 f1.8 full frame lens.
Mm-hmm.
And the messaging at the time was basically, no one shoots APS-C anymore. Why would he make that other dumb lens? And there was rioting in the streets. And now there's a rumor that there's going to be an APS-C version.
Yep.
And I'm super pumped about it, even though I probably won't buy this lens.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. I remember us talking about that 28 to 45 when it came out, and I don't know. The 28 to 45 I felt like was a little disappointing compared to the magic that was the 18 to 35. So it's interesting now.
Well,
it was
because of the range, right? I mean, I think you can't discount the 18 to 45 because, it's a 1.8 full frame lens.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why we were all itching for that, a new version of the APS-C one, was because there aren't really 1.8 zooms for APS-C.
Yeah.
And
it was a very unique lens.
there are good reasons to shoot, smaller sensor cameras and portability and other things, price, blah, blah, blah. It's cool to have an option that you can get something that's even faster because you're always trying to compete with the big boys,
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I got a 2.8 zoom, but that's f4 full frame equivalent and blah, blah, blah. And what if I want like a certain depth of field look, or I'm trying to get more light because I really like my Fujifilm camera, but sometimes you gotta shoot in the dark.
When I, the GH5 and the 18 to 35 on a speed booster was kind of like the quintessential combo that it felt like everyone was using for a while. And I had that set up. And so I, shooting Micro Four Thirds on a GH5, but with the speed booster, that f1.8 was like f1.2. And so, by the time you convert that back into full frame equivalent, it really made the GH5 a lot better at low light than it had any right to be otherwise. So having this lens on APS-C kind of, I think, gives you that same benefit where like you can be shooting something like a Fuji and, your sensor's smaller than full frame, but like the speed of this lens sort of makes up for that.
Did they announce what mounts they might be bringing this to?
So they didn't announce anything because it's
sorry, it's a rumor.
Yeah.
Was it rumor? We saw it on the Fuji site,
yeah,
and I saw it on every other rumor site too. So
honestly, if they're making it for APS-C, I have to imagine they're going to do it on all the mounts.
Probably Z, XF, RF, and E. Does Nikon have any APS-C cameras right now?
The ZFC maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
This might be maybe not Z mount.
This might be a little too big for that, but Canon is letting them make RF APS-C glass.
And Canon has some APS-C cameras that are decent for video.
They do.
Like the R50V.
Yep.
And the
C70.
The R7.
Mm-hmm.
And the C70.
Yeah. Could be pretty interesting for those applications.
I think so.
I think a 17 to 40 1.8 on RF is really interesting.
Yeah.
This thing is rumored to be somewhere around like 4.5 inches long, or like 115 millimeters or something along that lines, with a 67 millimeter filter thread. That is really similar to the size of the Tamron 17 to 70.
Yeah.
Which is not a short lens.
It's not a short lens, but one thing to keep in mind about this one, that the, again, rumored, internal zoom.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
I think that makes up for the size.
That was something that was really nice about the original 18 to 35.
Yeah.
Where it was made it a really good gimbal lens.
It felt like the 18 to 35 was a big lens. And this lens actually, I think, is smaller and lighter by quite a bit compared to the 18 to 35. And I guess that's just modern, modern advancements. But yeah, I mean, any like wide aperture zoom is going to be heavier, than not.
Yes, I mean, like we can guess, however much about this thing. They seemed like it was a pretty good rumor dump. Some information about, maybe it's going to be really fast focusing, and maybe it'll have really good focus breathing Control, and blah blah blah. This thing is supposed to be announced, I think, June 17th, which is actually 7 days after this episode releases.
Tell us if we're right or not.
Ideally, it's exactly what we're talking about, and we won't have to loop back too much on this. I think this is a pretty interesting rumor because it's a lens that I'm really excited for Sigma to make. I like it whenever they're supporting manufacturers where manufacturers aren't making lenses, basically.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a niche that no camera manufacturer has filled.
For sure.
I would be, if I wasn't kind of moving away from Fuji, I would be interested in this lens because I feel like, I mean, it wouldn't replace something like, like an 8. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's not that far off from 50, but I still feel like it wouldn't replace like your standard zoom, like your 16 to 55 or whatever. Because I mean, it's a little bit heavier, and maybe not quite long enough to replace like a 16 to 55 or a 17 to 70. But when I think about things like shooting A-roll for videos, I would definitely be on board with something like this. Like maybe I'm not always wanting to shoot at f1.8, but the advantage to that is that usually lenses sharpen up once you go, stop down just a little bit. And so if this goes to 1.8, I feel like by the time you get to 2.8, it's going to be pretty sharp.
I would definitely consider this as a nice pair to the 50 to 140 on Fujifilm for like an XH2 or an XH2S. If I wasn't already so heavily invested in standard zooms at this point, or I didn't have one, I would probably pick this over a 16 to 55.
I guess if you had the 50 to 140, the only gap then you have is 40 to 50 millimeter.
Which, fine.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a problem at all. And it's in full frame numbers. This is like a 25 to 60. I mean, it's better than it's more range and just as fast as the 28 to 60 that Panasonic just announced for
24
L-mount.
to 60, but yeah.
Well, okay, fine. Well, fine. It's roughly the same range as the 24 to 60 that they just announced. And that's perfectly serviceable. I think this combined with the 50 to 140 is a really interesting combo to cover a full range. And it would pretty much, it's faster than the f2 primes. It's not quite f1.4, but that 2/3 stop isn't probably going to make a world of difference. And so I could see this being, you don't have to get the 16, the 23, the 33, or the 35.
Yeah.
You can kind of just get this, skip the primes, and then have less lenses in your kit.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never.
Yeah, you would never, but one could.
But one could. Yeah. So I think it's really interesting, and it's going to be probably really tempting if you weren't making me switch to L-mount.
Yep.
Which has me wanting to talk about the other rumor for the other lens that's probably already announced at this point, which is this rumor for a 200 millimeter f2.
Yeah, that's That is an interesting one because L mount I think doesn't have too many telephoto primes like that. Nowhere near as much as what Canon and Nikon have.
Whenever we were talking about L mount and what lenses you needed to buy, it was basically once you get over 105, there aren't really any fast primes for L mount.
Yeah, you're looking at zooms. Get like a 100 to 300 or 70 to 200 or whatever.
But furthermore, other than Fujifilm, I don't think anyone's making a 200 millimeter f2 full frame like a f2 200 millimeter lens. Period. This is supposedly going to be full frame, which means that it would, if that's true, if it's like a 200 millimeter full frame f2 lens, it would kind of be one of a kind.
Yeah. I mean, they'd probably make it for E and L.
Yep.
But yeah, it'd be unique.
I would find something like that extremely interesting.
Really?
I mean, I think on APS-C, you would have to be, what would that be? It would be 150, I guess, because 70 to 200. I think that, didn't Sony make a zoom that goes out to f2 that's 200 millimeter? Or am I mixing that up with something? That's the 150.
Yeah, the 50 to 150.
Yeah, boy, that lens.
Yeah.
Man, how about that thing?
Wish we get that.
Ooh, boy. Anyway, this is really interesting.
The other nice thing about these telephoto primes is that's one of the times when I think a teleconverter comes really in handy because you can get a little bit more flexibility out of it.
Oh man, if this thing worked with a teleconverter and you could do 400 f4.
Oh, I'm sure it would. Like teleconverters seems like they only work on certain lenses, but they almost always work on telephoto stuff. And like imagine getting the 2X and you have a 200 or a 400. That makes it way more useful.
Yeah, I think this one's really interesting because it's sometimes those long telephoto zooms, like if you're looking at a 400 or a 600, those feel very single purposed, more for things that are out there like sports or wildlife and less so for people. Whereas I could imagine a 200 millimeter being for like mega creamy headshots and like maybe even like indoor event photography because it's long enough that you can get like a concert staging and some nice tight shots, but it's still f2, and so you can get some low noise type photos. Versus something like you wouldn't really bring a 600 millimeter. I mean, I guess maybe you would. I'm gonna take that back. But
the point of reference I've heard is that people that shoot NFL games, like sometimes like in the contract, it's actually specified like you have to have a 400 millimeter lens.
Yep.
Like that's the focal length that's used for that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
and
where
so
they're working.
I think if you visualize somebody a photographer standing on the sideline of an NFL game shooting pictures, and we've all seen pictures from football games, like that's what 400 millimeters looks like. That doesn't feel realistic for most event stuff that we shoot.
Right.
But I could see half of that being useful.
Yeah, I think that, because 70 to 200, right? I'll zoom all the way into 200 or, 150 or whatever.
Yeah, and the idea of having a faster lens and getting the improved quality from a prime is pretty appealing.
I know. So we'll see if this one's true. I mean, everyone already know by the time we're talking about it. But if it is true, I bet this thing's going to be just a monster.
Yeah. I mean, the question will be how expensive is it? Because those telephoto lenses can get pretty high.
So stinking expensive. Yeah. I think there was a few other rumors here that may be coming out. I don't want to talk about any of the cine stuff. We'll talk about that next week. There was a rumor that there may be an RF 12 millimeter 1.4 with an aperture ring.
That's all weird.
Which is an APS-C lens. And I hope that that's true and that they bring it to Fuji. Because there is a 13 millimeter f1.4 from Viltrox that's nice, but there's no 12 millimeter fast primes on Fuji right now.
Interesting.
And getting a nice ultra wide Sigma prime on Fuji could be pretty
interesting. Especially like assuming it's rectilinear, no weird distortion stuff. It would be useful for a lot of things.
Actually, I don't think there's any 12 millimeter 1.4 primes other than the Leica Micro Four Third.
Interesting.
So that would be, if true, another lens that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Sigma out here just making lenses that don't exist.
Honestly,
man.
That's what needs to happen though. We have so many 24 to 70, 70 to 200. Those things have kind of been done. I'm glad to see these unique optical formulas coming out.
Yeah, definitely. And so the real reason I wanted to put all of this on our list is because I wanted to use it as a springboard to talk a little bit about third-party lenses and to complain about the Viltrox 75 that you sold me.
You've talked that lens up so much.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's a great lens.
It just seems like such a great lens, and like you get great photos out of it. I'm like, I really want that lens, and then you finally sold it to me. And Daniel,
just a disappointment.
Is there any issues with this lens that you're aware of that you've had problems with?
Not that I can think of.
No, nothing. No, like weird idiosyncrasies on how it works on the Fuji body.
No,
nothing that's ever come up.
Honestly, I haven't seen any problems with it.
Okay,
do tell.
So talk to me about whenever you shot on the Viltrox 75 1.2, how you switched between manual focus and autofocus.
This is the classic thing you would complain about. I mean, I'm using the X-H2S, so I don't have a switch for it. Like the camera does not have an autofocus.
Yeah, you have
switch.
To press a button and change it in the
so
menu.
I just change it in the menu. I don't know. I thought that worked.
Have you not noticed that if you change it in the menu, that if you're setting manual focus on the lens, you can't change the autofocus setting on the camera? And furthermore,
it sounds vaguely familiar now that you mention that.
Yep. If you're set into autofocus and you flip the lens into manual focus and you turn the aperture ring, it doesn't manual focus. So you have to have it in the correct mode on the lens to change the setting, to then change the setting on, to have the right mode on the lens, to change the setting on the camera, to then change the setting on the lens again, to then manual focus.
So wait.
I think what it is you have to be in autofocus, and then you can press the button to change to manual focus, and then you have to change to manual focus on the lens so you can manual focus.
So can you not just leave the lens in autofocus all the time?
No, they have to be in agreement for it to work.
Weird. I think the reason I didn't run into that is because I haven't used that lens for video, and typically when I'm doing like event shooting and stuff,
I haven't used it for video.
I don't think so. Maybe I did a little bit, but
Daniel, don't you care about delicious creamy B-roll?
Most of the time, what I've done is I leave my camera in manual focus, and I do back button autofocus, and so I
couldn't get it to do it.
I'm not frequently switching between those things.
Anyways,
I'm pretty sure you can do back button autofocus with
this is not the first time I've had this stupid problem on third-party lenses with the Fujifilm, and it's frustrating and annoying, and I hate it.
I wonder if you can update the firmware. The lens has a USB-C port on it.
Oh, I'm going to be looking into it.
Yeah.
Don't think I won't. I'm knowing that your 3-year-old X-H2S is still on firmware 1.1.
It is not.
You're right. You updated it so we could do time code. Like,
dude, ISO on a dial is so good. Why did you let me wait so long? It's so good.
You waited like a year.
I don't update things. I'm a software engineer. I know what happens behind the scenes. I know how the sausage is made, and I'm not updating software unless I have to. But seriously, you should probably look and see if that lens has a firmware update.
I get it. And like, if it does, I feel guaranteed that it has not been updated.
Yeah.
Ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why would I update the firmware on a lens? Who has time for that?
Me. I do. And like, clearly it needs to be done.
You know how on my my Portkeys camera monitor, every time we do a shoot, you're like, Daniel, I don't know how to use this thing, and I don't know how to use it either. There's new firmware for that monitor that like radically improves the UI. I just haven't made time to update it. It's been months.
You like bragged about how much you love that monitor.
It's a great
and
monitor.
Every time I try to use it, I want to rip it off your camera and just chuck it across the room. I'm like, Daniel, I can't turn on the histogram.
Yep.
Daniel, you got to come over here and tapping the stupid screen. What's happening?
I really need to update the firmware because it probably fixes all those problems.
I cannot figure out how to use that stinking monitor.
Yep. That monitor is worth it to me because you can focus peak on a subset of the screen rather than on the entire screen.
Yeah, that's a great feature. There's really probably other featers that you could just update to.
Yeah, no one will ever know unless I actually update the firmware.
I mean, and I'm not going to risk it until you do.
Yeah.
After this horrible experience. Anyway, point is, if you listen to this podcast, don't take any of Daniel's advice.
Yep. Just ignore all of it.
Literally everything that he said about that whatever it is, controller for Lightroom.
It's all terrible.
Terrible. It probably has a firmware update he hasn't done.
It probably does, man. Who knows?
I mean, that's probably why I didn't work with Lightroom regular.
Oh, you think so?
I don't know, man.
You're proud of me though, when I was doing this whole investigation, I actually had to update my my OS on like my Mac OS.
What were you,
Sequoia.
like 3 versions back or something?
I think I was 2 versions back.
Still on like Mavericks.
Yeah, and
somehow.
I finally had to update it because I needed a newer version of Lightroom Cloud to be able to install the Logitech plugin. So now my OS is updated.
Unbelievable. Listen, I'm leaving.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter at CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.